As you can tell by everything that I upload here, I love video games, and I sometimes find myself thinking, what are my favorite video game franchises? So to finally answer this question for myself, and anyone else that may or may not want to know, I decided I would make this list. Before I delay myself with a long discussion of some sort, let's get started. I've always loved action games, especially when there are stealth mechanics involved. That's why the Assassin's Creed games sit right at home for me. I didn't start playing the series until Assassin's Creed 2 came out, mainly because I didn't know it even existed until the second game came out. I won't explain the entire story here, but I'll just say that I can't believe I missed out on this series for so long. This series has some of my favorite games to come out for the Xbox 360 and PS3, and every main entry in the series is enjoyable. Well, most of them anyway. However, this series also has its share of mediocre to bad handheld games. I've only played a few of these, so I won't talk about them too much. Anyway, with 5 main entries in the series and a 6th on its way, Assassin's Creed is a series that brings constant enjoyment for me, especially the second game. Wacky and over-the-top games are always awesome, and when you throw aliens and some pretty big 50s B-movie parodies, you get the Destroy All Humans games. The series always brought enjoyment and craziness when I was younger. The first game in the series hasn't aged incredibly well and is pretty buggy, at least every copy I've owned is pretty buggy. The second game is just as awesome as it was when I first played it. Destroy All Humans 2 is tons of fun alone, but multiplayer is easily the best way to play this game. My cousin and I would spend hours just running around the city firing the dislocator everywhere and making people and cars fly all around Bay City. Destroy All Humans Path of the Furon, while I don't think it's as good as the second game, is still an amazing entry to the series. Path of the Furon added plenty of new and awesome weapons, like the Black Hole Gun. Gotta love that destruction. But my absolute favorite weapon in Path of the Furon, and maybe even the entire series, is the Tornadotron weapon. That is always awesome to look at. I think I've rambled enough. Next series. I've only recently started getting into this series, but the Splatterhouse games always bring a really big feeling of enjoyment and power for me. The series has 4 main entries, but I've only played 3. I haven't touched the 3rd game yet, but only because I haven't unlocked it in the Splatterhouse remake. This series is especially known for its crazy gore, mainly in the remake. While the early games aren't very gory by today's standards, for the time they were pretty violent and full of gore. Hell, in the early games when an enemy is hit with a 2x4, they splatter against the wall. That's always satisfying. If you haven't played this series yet, give it a chance. You might just like it. There's no easier way to say it. I friggin' love Mega Man. Mainly the X series, but the classic games have their share of awesomeness as well. While most people dismiss the later games in the classic series and claim they're terrible, I enjoy Mega Man 4, 5, and 6 more than any of the other classic Mega Man games. As for the later 3 entries in the Mega Man X series, X4, X5, and X6, while they certainly aren't terrible with the exception of X6, I think they don't even compare to X1, X2, and X3. Mainly X2, which is my personal favorite of the series. And there's just something about those first 3 games that I feel more enjoyable than the later games of the series. I won't talk about X7 and X8 as I haven't played them yet. The feeling of excitement and speed in Mega Man X always brings great enjoyment for me. There's no doubt about it. I love The Legend of Zelda. I'm not the biggest fan of the 3D titles, and the only ones I can get into are Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. The rest aren't terrible, except for a certain Wii title, but I find that the overhead Zelda games are of much higher quality and are far more enjoyable, especially A Link to the Past, which is my personal favorite in the series. The music, environments, much improved gameplay, and grander story than the previous 2 games make this the perfect Zelda game in my opinion. Whenever I play a Zelda game, I get sucked into the world of Hyrule and can experience the story as if I was actually there. Bottom line, the Zelda series is immersive and insanely. I love RPGs. a lot. Even though I'm not very good at them, I've still got plenty of enjoyment out of experiencing the story and try to strategize using my attacks and spells. But out of all the RPG series, the Mother series is without a doubt my favorite. Mainly Mother 2, or EarthBound here in America. I'm not a big fan of Mother 3, but I love EarthBound. It's one of my favorite games of all time. The clever mind of Shigesato Itoi helps the dialogue be funny, emotional, and a combination of many other things. The story isn't exactly original, as it can easily be summed up as, save the world from an evil alien, but it's still enjoyable to see everything unfold the way it does. The Mother series is a quirky and fun game series that everyone should try at some point. Mario, Mario, Mario. Whether it's the 2D and 3D platformers, the isometric RPGs, or any of the many other genres Mario has invaded, just about everyone loves Mario. Everyone has a favorite type of Mario game, and for me, it's the classic 2D games. I always enjoy playing a classic 2D Mario game. The graphics are nice and colorful, the controls are smooth and responsive, and the gameplay is tons of fun. You just can't go wrong with a 2D Mario game, except maybe Lost Levels. While just about every 2D Mario game is worth your time, Super Mario World is easily the one that I recommend and love the most. There's the awesome Cape Feather, food-themed levels that always make me hungry, and the incredibly happy and upbeat soundtrack. It's always a ton of fun playing Mario World and the other 2D Mario games. I'm gonna say this right now. I'm not a big fan of puzzle games, but the Portal series is always a ton of fun. The first game is pretty minimalistic, but Valve went all out with Portal 2. The story is bigger, the gameplay is improved with the addition of gels, reflection cubes, light bridges, and even co-op is added, which is a ton of fun. The Portal series always seemed more in-depth than other puzzle games to me. Especially in Portal 2, when Wheatley or GLaDOS says some kind of funny dialogue, and it's even better in the late game when GLaDOS and Wheatley are always bickering. Valve releases plenty of awesome games like the Half-Life series, Left 4 Dead, and even Team Fortress 2, but the Portal games have always managed to be my favorite. Gameplay that's tons of fun, dialogue that always manages to make me smile, and in the case of Wheatley, laugh outright. Most definitely worth your time. The Blue Blur himself, Sonic the Hedgehog. These games are just an endless amount of fun. Even one of the worst games in the series, Sonic 06, is tons of fun with its crazy glitches. Just about every entry in the series is full of speed and awesome music. And even though the series went downhill for a few years just as soon as Shadow the Hedgehog was released, I've still enjoyed nearly every game that came after that. Now Sonic has made his comeback with Colors and Generations, which are some of the best entries in the series in a long time. Everyone has varying opinions on the series. There are those that only like the classic games, those who only like the modern games, but then there are people, like me, who enjoy both the classic and the modern games. More recent Sonic games are filled to the brim with speed, especially Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations. With both of these games, I always have a great sense of speed. How fast Sonic can get always blows my mind. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Yes, my favorite video game franchise is Metroid. The atmosphere, combined with the exploration, music, and flawless gameplay equals an example of excellence in video games. I'm not really a big fan of the Prime series. They certainly aren't terrible, but I've never found much enjoyment in them. But the 2D Metroid games are amazing. I can't think of a single bad 2D Metroid game. Metroid 2 is easily my least favorite and can be considered the worst, but it's still a great game. The series also houses my favorite game of all time, Super Metroid. Okay, hold on. Before I continue, I'm just gonna praise Super Metroid for a bit. Super Metroid is flawless. I know that's saying a bit much, but I mean it. I can't think of a single problem with the game. There are minor annoyances, but that would just be nitpicking, so I'm not even gonna bother. The gameplay has been tremendously improved from Metroid and Metroid 2. Samus can shoot diagonally now, the run button has been added, and you can even moonwalk! Super Metroid's soundtrack is also amazing. Every single track sets the tone for the area. The music for places like Meridia makes the area feel very empty and abandoned. The graphics also help enhance the atmosphere, with areas being incredibly detailed, and areas like the wrecked ship just look amazing and even look, well, wrecked. I've already said it once, but I'll say it again. Super Metroid is flawless. Everything about it is just awesome. Praise over. Super Metroid eventually did get a story sequel. The only problem is, that story sequel is the worst game I've ever played. Metroid Other M. I hate nearly everything about this game. The only positives I can really think of are the graphics, which look really nice for a Wii game, the remix of Ridley's theme, and the Ridley boss fight. Other than those three things, everything about Other M is terrible. The controls are incredibly awkward and restrictive since you can only use the Wii remote to play the game. The story and voice acting are god-awful. The music is not only forgettable, except for Ridley's theme, but overall just bland. And there's barely any music in the first place. I'll probably go more in-depth one day, but not today. Other M is the only game in the series that I truly hate. Every other game in the series is worth your time, especially Super Metroid. This has been Vicious Phantom. I hope you all enjoyed, and I bid you adieu.